All right, we are live. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Google Advanced Livestream sessions, where today's episode will focus on Google Analytics Health. If you tuned into the session 2 weeks ago, you might remember me. If not, no worries. I'll introduce myself again. So my name is Sveva. I'm an account manager here at our Dublin office, working for the Dutch market, and I'll be your co-host for today. And with me today here is Matthijs, a measurement and attribution specialist. So Matthijs, hope you had a good week so far, even though it's been a little bit gloomy weather outside.
I had a great week, actually. I was thinking about this actually before because I already heard some comments about the rain. But for us as Dutch people, actually a good thing to know is that on an annual basis, there's less rain in Dublin than there is in Amsterdam. So there's no reason for us to complain about the weather in Dublin.
All right, that's an answer of a true measurement specialist. Well, actually, maybe can you tell us briefly a little bit about your role?
Of course. So I work here as a measurement and attribution specialist in our Dublin office, in particular for the Northern European market. That implies that I work for the Nordic countries as well as for the Benelux in helping our advertisers understand what are the campaigns that drive value for their business and what are not. For example, I work across multiple pieces of our software stack, including Google Analytics, Google Ads, sometimes also for the Google Marketing Platform, platforms such as Search Ads 360, but it's all around measurement within our own measurement and advertising properties.
Right, all clear, thank you. So this is the 3rd out of 7 episodes that we're hosting over a period of 14 weeks. And the goal of these sessions is to go in depth into the latest of Google Ads products, covering solutions across all levels of the marketing funnel. And today's focus will be on Google Analytics Help. And the right person to talk to about that is Matthijs, of course. And we want to give you the opportunity to do so as well. So the structure is as follows. So we set aside 30 minutes for the content presented by Matthijs, and then we have another 20 minutes of Q&A with questions from you in the audience. So we've sent out a form already, so maybe you have been able to submit your questions there already. If not, you can still do it actually right now using the chat functionality in the YouTube interface. If you do so, please refrain from asking sensitive questions about your business, because everyone who tunes in will be able to see your name and your questions, so keep that in mind. If you have those questions, please feel free to reach out to your Google point of contact after the session of today. So we have a lot to cover today, so we'll be starting quickly. Just one more thing to note is that we will be sending over the recording and the slides after this session as well. Please note that the Q&A part will not be included in the recordings. And with that, that's all of the practical information from my side. So thank you all for tuning in. And then now I'll be handing over to Matthijs to walk you through the contents.
Thank you, Sveva. Again, a lot to cover today. So let's jump into the table of contents. There are, I think, 2 main points of what I want to share with you all today. The first piece around the introduction of what is Google Analytics Health and what does it imply. Also, why do we think that it's important for you as a business to actually care about this at this stage? And then the second piece is really around what are the 6 base elements that we've identified, showing you what are the elements, how do you actually take action in the Google Analytics account, what are some of the requirements, and also are there any help center articles that can be helpful for you in setting up these 6 base elements. Good to mention is that what this session is about is having the right setup in times where a lot of things are changing in the digital marketing space. Think about regulatory changes, but also browser changes are very relevant at this stage to take into consideration. So this is what this session is. What this session is not about is really deep, technical, complex use cases of Google Analytics or Google Analytics 360. So if you have very specific questions around your business about certain integrations with internal platforms or platforms from Google or non-Google platforms, I would encourage you to get in touch with your account team, either in the ads team, so the account managers here, or the account managers that you may or may not have through our Google Marketing Platform team. If you are a Google Analytics 360 user, so the paid version of Google Analytics, then do take into account that it would be good that before making any big changes based on this session, to get in touch with them to understand what the implications are for you as a 360 user. Without further ado, I think let's jump into the content, right?
Great.
Good, off we go. So initially, I would like to introduce the topic and why we think it's an important topic. Now, with that, I think we have to start with the objective and the purpose with which you use Google Analytics. We think a good basis is important because of basically 4 base elements that you use Google Analytics for. First thing being audience creation. So understanding what the people do on your website after they've clicked an ad or an organic channel or an email channel is a really important piece of digital marketing, right? It's all around the measurability. Understanding which piece of the audience is more valuable than another can help you actually drive a better outcome. So you have to gather accurate audience data in order to actually make a good segmentation of the audience. And otherwise, the segmentation will be not as effective as possible. The second piece is around understanding conversions and the value of those conversions. So for an e-commerce business, it's pretty obvious, right? This is revenue. But also for businesses that have less tangible conversions, it could still be possible to actually define one of these conversion values. So you have to do this correct in order to actually measure the right people at the right time and not measure maybe wrong conversions or double count conversions and so on. The third piece is around reporting insights. I think understanding which audience is more valuable to your business than another is one of those kind of insights. And I think Google Analytics, at least for most of the businesses that I've seen in the registration form, is actually the source of truth for doing decision making in online marketing. So third piece is around reporting, and then finally attribution. The question around where do I invest my marketing budgets in the online space is a really complex one, but a good setup will actually help you to understand whether it was actually paid media or non-paid media or email marketing that drove the desired outcome for your business. So this is, in a sense, why a good setup matters. Also, what I'd like to mention is that the setup is a foundation of doing business. So a good setup will help you develop deeper insights into what you're actually doing. So that's also for today, basically. So that's where the separation is that I'd like to make. So it's around generating deeper insights. And if you generate deeper insights, you can actually move towards a space where you can be fully data-driven, where you do not use standard rules to make decisions, but actually leverage the data-driven capabilities that our platforms have. There are 2 elements to it here. These are the 2 blue boxes. It's not only, the right setup is not only about understanding the business that you're currently running, so the current performance of your business, but it's really about improving your business for future success. So that's really around, are you gonna be as effective tomorrow as you are today? And then I link it again back to the changes in the ecosystem, where we see regulatory changes as well as changes in the browser ecosystem. Now, there are 6 elements to it, and these are the 6 elements that I'd like to discuss today. Some are more obvious than others. I think if I look through the registrations, I saw many businesses that have at least 4 of these elements done correctly. But I would still like to go over each and single one of them. The first 2 are around account settings. We consider the implementation process for this rather easy. The second are around using Google Analytics in the correct manner. We would still consider this relatively easy, although there is a bit more required from your side as an advertiser or partner or marketing agency in actually using Google Analytics in the correct manner. And then finally, there's the data accuracy, where we think implementation is a little bit more complex, but these are 2 more steps. So if we go into them one by one, the first step would be bot filtering. And again, I'll go into them, each and single one of them, a little bit deeper in a moment. So the first one is around bot filtering, filtering out traffic that is not relevant for decision making. Second one is around setting up Google Signals, which is allowing you to gain deeper insights in your Google Analytics account based on data that you have combined with data that Google has from users that are opting into ads personalization. So that's around linking data sets. The third step is around linking Google Ads with Google Analytics and doing that correctly in order to activate data in the most proper manner. Step 4 is around reports in Google Analytics, not only Google Analytics, but also Google Data Studio, where you can actually build dynamic and live reports. Step 4 and 5 are around the accuracy, as I said. First of the two is around auto-tagging Google Media. This is not only about auto-tagging, also about cross-domain tracking, for example, or setting up the right referral exclusions. What this is, you will hear in a minute. And then finally, step 6 is around what are the actual tags that you're using, conversion tags, tracking tags, and how do you implement them most effectively, so to say. So jumping into the first one, the 6 base elements. Step 1 is around turning on bot filtering. And I don't know whether you're familiar with bot filtering, Svevo, but there are a lot of different bots and spiders going around on the web. Some are functional, some are useful, some are not useful at all. Some are set up by yourself as an advertiser. But to give you an example, it could be that search engines are crawling your website, causing hits. It could be that you're checking your own server with the system, whether your load times are good or not. But what this does is, if these hits turn into actual sessions, is that it can affect, for example, the e-commerce conversion rate. And that's something that you wouldn't want to happen, obviously, because this is generating a bias in your data set. So what we suggest here in step 1 is to consider the amount of views that you've set up within a property. So if you've set up a Google Analytics property, you can generate multiple views. What we suggest here to do is always have 3 views. The first one is the raw data view, where you do not apply any filters, also not for bot filtering. You don't do any IP blocking for your personal your business IP. That's the first one, the raw data view. The second one is the actual production view. This is the live view, the master view, many of us call it. And the third one would be a test view. The master view is the one that you use for marketing. This is the one that you link to Google Ads. This is the one that you use for reporting. And this is the exact one where we suggest to turn on bot filtering. Right? So that's the first thing. Good to take into account is that you have to be an admin in the Google Analytics account to actually do this. So if you do not see this feature in the settings, under admin view settings, if you do not see it, that could imply that you're currently not an admin user. Now, on the slide here in the bottom, you'll see a Help Center article. As we'll share the slides afterwards, you can always click on those links to actually read a little bit more information to understand how this is affecting Google Analytics and whether you can actually switch it on without any worries. So this is step 1, actually. Step 2 is around Google Signals, and I briefly hinted upon this just now in the introduction. But what Google Signals allows you to do as an again Google Analytics admin user is to link site visitation data, so the data that you as an advertiser or marketing agency have from a website, to link that with Google login data. So this implies that on the website you have the right consent from users to actually do this, and we on our side of the equation, we have consent from users to use their data for ads personalization if people have switched this on in their Google account. If you're not familiar with these settings, you can always go there. If you go to accounts.google.com, check your ads privacy settings and check it yourself what your settings are. Again, if we have the right consent, we can actually link this data, and this gives you a few new capabilities in Google Analytics. One of them I'm pretty excited about as a measurement specialist, which is the ability to track cross-device behavior in Google Analytics, and that's the first. Actually, because before we would never allow that. That was not possible. So if you activate Google Signals, you get a few new reports. On the right-hand side, you can see one of these reports here. This is the device overlap report. This, for example, shows how much overlap there is between devices, but there are a few more, and essentially you get a new all channels report as well, that shows you what the channels look like in terms of performance if you apply cross-device information. Some will ask me about the user ID view, because user ID views are a possibility to link login data from your website to Google Analytics and there make some form of cross-device. Where user ID views are linking users based on the login on your website. Google Signals allows to actually leverage the login rates that Google have about certain users, and we use all the properties that we have to gather this information. So think about YouTube, Google Maps, Android, the Play Store, Google Gmail, and so on. So to that extent, we expect a bit higher match rates to actually show as a result of Google Signals compared to the user ID view. But cross-device is not the only thing that Google Signals allows you to do as an advertiser. It also allows you to see cross-device audiences. And the benefit here is that, let's say I'm an e-commerce business and I want to understand what my most valuable users are. You can, in the current state where where somebody has not switched on Google Signals, you can only see, let's say, the revenue that somebody generated on each individual device. But what cross-device audiences allow for is to actually stack that on top of each other and then say what's the most valuable user. And if there are users that use many devices for conversions, you automatically see that value spreads out, right? So it's a bit of a deduplication in the audience segment. I keep using the e-commerce example. This is obviously also relevant for other businesses, because think, for example, about cross-device frequency capping. So if you are, let's say, in finance, and you sell loans, your conversion is a loan application, and you run display banners. What you could do is actually say, I do not want to show a maximum of 5 ads per device, but I want to show a maximum of 5 ads per user per day. And that really enhances your capabilities of doing that frequency capping. In the future, and I can unfortunately not speculate on new features that we haven't launched, but in the future we expect to launch a lot more functionality based on Google Signals. And the consent that we have. So if at this point you think Google Signals may not be relevant for you, definitely keep an eye out on the pages and on the emails that you receive from us about Google Analytics, because we do really expect that in the near future new functionalities will roll out. All right, then we go to step 3. This is a bit more simple, and I can be a bit shorter than for the first 2 steps. Step 3 is around linking Google Analytics to Google Ads. And you would say, why is this relevant? Well, this allows you to actually make deeper analysis. Sorry. One of the examples could be that you will see bounce rates in Google Ads. So you can from campaign to campaign decide understand what the most engaging user, what pulled in the most engaging user to your website, what campaign or ad. But it also allows you to better create remarketing audiences or enhance your conversion tracking. You set up links at property and view level. So in the example on the right-hand side, you'll see our Google Merchandise Store. I grayed out the actual account IDs, but basically what this looks like is that you create a new account link on the red button, and you can then link your accounts. This should be pretty straightforward. I think most of the businesses that I saw in the registration form have actually done this already, but it's definitely worth checking quickly, because again, in times where the ecosystem is changing, this can help you link data. Then step 4, actively using reports. And this is again around the purpose with which you use Google Analytics. I cannot tell you to use Google Analytics just because I think it's interesting for you. You should see the value there. On one hand, there are the key reports, the standard reports in Google Analytics. This is the acquisition report or the behavior report. I think most of you are familiar with that. But if you have, let's say, a different reporting tool, I do understand that some businesses may use other tools for reporting. I would still like to emphasize here, and it's in very small letters in the in the documentation section, that we have Data Studio now completely launched or fully launched. It was in beta for quite a while, but we've launched it now fully, and there's a library available with standard reports. So let's say for YouTube, you can run standard reports if you link it to Google Ads. But also for e-commerce, you can run standard reports if you link it to Google Analytics. So it could be really worth it to actually check these reports. There are a few examples here of things that you can actually check. So again, user ID, data import, Google Signals. But I'd like to encourage especially the businesses that currently are not a, let's say, heavy user of Google Analytics to explore the opportunities that you have with Data Studio, as is it's a really interesting visualization tool that I know some of the clients that I work with leverage, for example, for their weekly meetings, where they check week on week how we're doing, quarter on quarter, what are we doing, year on year, what are we doing, and really try to understand business performance over time. And for example, even visualize that performance in graphs and charts. Step 4. Now, step 5 is around auto-tagging Google Media. It is not only about auto-tagging, but I will initially go into auto-tagging. What auto-tagging does is basically classifies the source and medium if somebody comes to your website from a Google channel. That means that in Google Analytics, on the right-hand side, you see some examples. You will actually be able to distinguish Google CPC, so paid search, and Google Organic, so that never pollutes each other in a sense. It's a really easy to set up tool, and it may help you to actually group channels more easily. It does require a Google Ads implementation. So if you do not use Google Ads, this may not be super relevant for you, but it's still an easy tool if you use Google Ads. The other two pieces here, important to mention, are, for example, cross-domain tracking. In the example that I saw in some of the documentation around this session, it explained about an online grocery shop. Let's say you have onlinegroceryshop.com, and you have a subdomain around recipes, recipe.onlinegroceryshop.com. It could imply that if you do not set up cross-domain tracking, that every session from the recipe website and the main domain will be creating new sessions, basically. So what that does is you create essentially two independent sessions, and cross-domain tracking will allow you to stitch those sessions together. Doing so will bring down the amount of sessions that do not convert, for example. So that may help you there, and it also gives you a stronger insight of, for example, which are the users that come from the recipe subdomain to the main domain. This could also be, I saw websites that have a helpcenter.example.com, for example. It's really important to check this because, again, you could create different sessions. So second piece is around cross-domain tracking. The third piece is around identifying third parties that your website is dependent upon. So let's say payment providers or, I don't know, other kind of cross-checking domains that you use. That could result in a referral to your website, but are, in a sense, not really driving the referral. Let me make that more concrete. Let's say I have a website, and after somebody makes a purchase, you send them to the payment provider website. Somebody finishes the payment there, the credit card provider, and then is referred back to the website. This could show up in some cases as if somebody was referred to your website from the payment provider. And if you were going to make budget allocation decisions based on this would imply that you at some point see a very good conversion rate from the payment provider and that you assign budget to it. You're not running ads on the payment provider's website, so it would be a bit odd to actually see conversions linked to that referral from the payment provider. So what you can do in the property settings is actually exclude those referrals, exclude payment providers or your own website and so on. So excluding those will help you to actually stitch those sessions together, because if somebody comes from the payment provider, actually what you're saying is, well, if somebody comes from the payment provider, do not assign a referral there, just go to the step before and actually get the best insights there. This is happening on a very big scale, in particular with e-commerce clients. I see this from my own experience. So it could be worth checking. If you can't find out how this works, again, check the documentation links, but also do reach out to your Google account team, because they should be able to either direct you to me or to direct you to the GTech teams that we have, which are technical support teams really capable of helping you solve this. So again, in 3 steps, the first thing is around auto tagging if you have Google Ads. The second step is around cross-domain tracking. Make sure that you link the right properties and domains. And the third thing is around third-party referral exclusions. And then we go to step 6, which is already the last step. And it's around correct data collection. And this is usually easier said than done, unfortunately. But the best thing to check for here is to actually understand differences between clicks and sessions. Let's say on my website I see loads of clicks, but very few sessions, or vice versa. That's not a good sign. So it just happens in some cases, but you should check for discrepancies bigger than 10%. Could imply that the tracking code is not set up correctly. Could be that one subdomain of the website is maybe not tracked correctly. Could be that there's some stuff going on elsewhere, but it's definitely something to solve for, because again, this can significantly affect conversion rates, how we link sessions together, and therefore, mess up the data. One of the things, and this is more general thing to take into account, is it is really helpful to use a tag management system. This can be Google Tag Manager in this example, obviously, but there are also other tag management systems available in the market. And the advantage of a tag management system over implementing independent tracking scripts is that you only implement the tag management system once, and then usually from a web interface you can manage the tags. This allows you to do better testing or easier testing. This prevents that you may mess up some of the source code of the website. Usually editing the source code of a website requires like really high level approval from a manager or director, is my experience. Whereas in a tag management system, there's not so much that can go wrong actually. So you don't have to edit the code in one of the production versions or test versions of the website. So that's one of the advantages. So the first thing would be again around checking for discrepancies. The second thing around Google Tag Manager as a tag management system. And finally, there's what I like to emphasize is site-wide tagging. And I hinted upon this a few times already, but we see quite some changes going on in the market. This is around regulation, for example, GDPR, but also browser changes where it's really required to think about what are the type of tags that I use, and is it basically future-proof. In an initiative to update the tags that most of the advertisers are using, we've launched site-wide tagging, and site-wide tagging implies that there's a piece of code on all of the pages of your website, so that we make sure that we track a user or be able to identify a user across your website as a whole. Site-wide tagging has 3 advantages, I think. The first thing being able for you as a business to adapt to changes. Second piece is around accuracy. Some of the browsers block a third-party cookie now. If you have conversion tracking that is dependent on third-party cookies, that could imply that you miss some of the conversions. So site-wide tagging helps you to use the first-party cookie, so the cookie that your domain stores in the browser of the user, to actually leverage that first-party cookie, and that you're not dependent on a third-party cookie for measurement. Finally, there's the third point. Integrations are fairly easy if you use a site-wide tagging form of tracking from Google. That is, if you use, for example, first example, the global site tag, the G tag, you can actually use that tag for Google Ads, for Google Analytics, for floodlight tracking. So again, you paste one piece of tag in the header, and then smaller pieces of code on individual pages that, for example, should result in a conversion. So when it comes to site-wide tagging, we generally have 3 solutions. The first one is the global site tag. The second one is implementing the global site tag through Google Tag Manager. There you go. And Google Tag Manager allows you to, once again, maybe I'm repeating myself, but to implement the tag once and then from a web interface implement individual tags without messing up or without having to mess in the source code of a website. The third option is to use Google Analytics for tracking, but good to emphasize here is that Google Analytics naturally doesn't allow for floodlight tags, for floodlight tracking. So you actually need another implementation there. So yeah, this was site-wide tagging. I think site-wide tagging is a really important topic, and most of the businesses, again, that I've seen in the registration form have actually fixed this. If you're not sure about whether you're measuring in a correct way, let's say with the first-party cookie, do reach out to your account team, do reach out to our GTAG support teams, either via email or phone, and they'll be able to help you assess this. So with that, I think I'm wrapping up with some next steps. First step being always keep improving. I think being a data-driven company implies that you're always on the lookout for what the next best thing is. For me, that implies that I never assume that analytics is finished or that attribution is done or that conversion tracking is working and that we're there. There's always a best next step. So I think this is really good to try to find out and dig deeper in data quality, dig deeper in your analytics account and ask the questions on one hand to your developers, because there's always the technical side of this. And on the other hand, the Google team that you're working with. So either your account manager or the support team or the digital agency that you're working with or the media agency, really trying to understand what are the kind of insights that we're driving and are we driving them through the latest and greatest that Google has to offer. That's the first thing. And as a second step, it is around moving up the curve. So it's not only around thinking about what we're doing now, but also thinking about what are we doing tomorrow. An example would be your Google Analytics conversion tracking. If you're using analytics conversion tracking, it could be worth checking out e-commerce tracking or enhanced e-commerce tracking or linking offline data or taking it a step further, basically. So again, it's around thinking about what is the best next step for my business, really with the goal to drive business success. And although I do not want to make this a sales pitch, I do want to emphasize that there are definitely businesses that are reaching the upper thresholds of what Google Analytics is possible or capable of. It could be worth checking with your account teams what the advantage would be of having a Google Analytics 360 implementation, because it definitely has an edge over the free version. So go into that with your account teams. So to summarize, 3 pieces for Google Analytics Health. The first one around account settings. These consist out of bot filtering and Google Signals. The second piece around the use of Google Analytics. This is around linking the accounts as well as leveraging Google Analytics reports. Don't forget to check out Data Studio here. And the last piece is around data accuracy, where we look into auto tagging Google Media, but also cross-domain tracking, referral exclusions, and then finally the data collection that has to be accurate, most desirably through a Google Tag Management system, measuring the site-wide tag. So this is it. Thank you for the attention here, and I'm handing off back to Svevo.
Great, thank you very much, Matthijs. 6 clear steps to improving your GA health, not only to understand your business better today, but to also improve on your performance going forward into the future. So thank you very much for that, and thank you all very much for tuning in.